Good evening and welcome to Solutionary TV. Tonight we are going to delve into consciousness and reflect on the potential, the probability, and actually the scientifically proven likelihood that we all are deeply intuitive and have the capacity to delve into prophetic dreams, revelatory foreknowing. And we're excited to have a guest with us tonight that has done an extensive amount of work in this regard. Help me welcome Dr. Larry Burk. Larry Burk, MD, CEHP, did his medical school and residency training at the University of Pittsburgh. He's trained in acupuncture and hypnosis and is a certified energy health practitioner. He was co-founder of Duke Integrative Medicine and is now a consulting associate in radiology at Duke. He also maintains a part-time coaching practice at Oriental Health Solutions, LLC. Dr. Burk is a guest trainer for the Medical Intuition and Symbolic Healing workshops at the Monroe Institute. He is a founding member of the American Board of Scientific Medical Intuition and a former board president of the Rhine Research Center. He has made several presentations on dream diagnosis at the International Association for the Study of Dreams. His book, Let Magic Happen: Adventures in Healing with the Holistic Radiologist, was published in 2012. He gave a fabulous TED Talk on cancer warning dreams that can save your life back in March of 2016. His book, Dreams That Can Save Your Life, Early Warnings and Warning Signs, of cancer and other diseases, will be published coming up this April. Looks like the 17th of 2018. We're looking forward to that. And many links and opportunities for him to share more about that will happen later on in the show. Welcome, Larry Burk. We're grateful to have you here.
Thanks, Tatiana. Great to be on the show.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I'm a fan of Larry and his work, and have seen his presentations in bringing other relevant guests into this area of consciousness and intuitive awareness at the Rhine. So I'm excited to hear more about this sharing with regards to prophetic dreams. As one that's always had prophetic dreams since I was a child, it isn't a matter of if, it's just a matter of absolutely, and how do we better interpret them. But I think that our viewing audience would love to know more about what brought you down the road doing this type of work, Larry. Can you share a little bit more with our folks?
I think I started keeping a dream diary in about 1986, so that's 30 years ago or so. And I've had quite a number of precognitive dreams myself. And over the years, I've paid more and more attention to the results of the diary and what happens afterwards. I've had the first memorable dream I had was a dream about that I had cancer on the left side of my brain. Oh. That was in 1987, and I just wrote it down. I didn't really think much of it. I just wrote it in a diary, and it turned out that night was a night when my parents had come from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia to visit me, and that was the only time I saw them in that whole 6-month period. And 2 weeks later, my dad was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and everyone was shocked because he looked so healthy. And in my dream, I had said, everyone was shocked because I looked so healthy. And I have the same name as my dad. I'm a junior.
Okay.
And the kidney has a cortex and medulla just like the brain does. And it was on the left side where his cancer was. And I didn't discover the correlation until a couple weeks later when I was looking at the dream. I said, oh man, I had a dream about cancer, and I had no clue that my dad was sick at the time. And it turned out that I had accurately predicted that he was going to have cancer.
Wow.
And that was my first really psychic experience, I think. And I don't get waking psychic visions like many of my intuitive friends do. Most of my information comes through dreams. So that was, and at the time I was reading Bernie Siegel's Love, Medicine, and Miracles book, and he talks about dreams that some of his patients had, that he had for his patients. And that was like a big wake-up call to me. And at the time I was basically making a living doing the early work on MRI, the knee, and MRI, the shoulder. So dreams were outside the scope of what I was used to working with. So, and then I realized, wow, something is going on here. So that was my intro.
Wow. Well, thank you for giving us that background. I think that as we develop some of the baseline on Solutionary TV and with our guests, it's been very clear that consciousness is not exclusively relegated to the body. It certainly isn't relegated to the brain. We've had some really wonderful guests that have already gone into the scientific expansive understanding of that, and some of the work that's been done with the military, et cetera, in remote viewing, astral projection. I mean, a lot of things have been really laid very well in terms of a foundation. What I find fascinating about your story is that your internal knowing, your ability to foreshadow or to pick up on energetic signals in your immediate proximity through a family member and to personalize it, chose to be interpreted as your actual cancer. You know, it was almost like an overlay of personalities. And also that it came through in a dream state where most of us are really highly receptive. I mean, when we're in the astral space, we know that just about anything can exist in the astral space. And we have a tendency not to have that, the ego mind running, interference with some of that intuition that's always looking to flow. Did you come to find that after you accepted, and you were obviously doing a lot of study, but as you accepted that there really was a foreshadowing or a revelatory component to that maybe some of your other dreams needed to be re-examined and really deepened your work for paying attention to all your dreams going forward with that dream journal?
Yeah, and I'm also remembering that my very first precognitive dream was before that one, and sometimes precognitive dreams have really a tremendous amount of meaning in them. Mm-hmm. Other times they're just trivial to get your attention, that this is possible, like telling you that the world's not quite the way it seems. Mm-hmm. And I remember falling asleep on a Friday night and having a dream about 4 black women like singing in a show, and this big fat drunk guy throwing beer all over the place. That was a dream on Friday night. And Saturday, I fell asleep late in the evening, and I woke up to find that Saturday Night Live was on. Mm-hmm. And Chris Farley, one of the old big comics, was in some bar throwing beer all over the place. And then they announced the guest musician was En Vogue, which is 4 black women in a singing group. I thought, whoa, I dreamed that the night before. Right. And that was my very first one. But of course, it was meaningless. It wasn't a life-changing experience. Right. Well, it was a life-changing experience, but I knew that there was like a glitch in the matrix, that something had happened that shouldn't happen according to the laws of physics. So that was, and that kind of primed me for other experiences. And then after I got here to North Carolina, I was had a dream that I had lung cancer. And I remembered that previous dream. And I thought, okay, I just had a dream about me having lung cancer. I don't have any lung symptoms. Don't have a reason to have lung cancer. I said, I'm just going to wait and see who this dream is about. Mm-hmm. And so I waited a week or two, and I resisted the urge to go get a chest X-ray, and finally went to a John Kabat-Zinn mindfulness meditation workshop. And I walk in, and Susan Gaylord, who was the program director in integrative medicine at UNC, runs up to me and says, "Barry, there's somebody I want you to meet. He's just like you." I thought, why is he just like me? And he's a radiologist. And brought him over, introduced me. I said, "Oh, unusual to see 2 radiologists at a mindfulness meditation workshop. What are you doing here? Are you here something to expand your practice or whatever?" I said, "No, I'm here for myself. I have lung cancer."
Oh, boy.
And I had these zing chills.
Yes.
I just sort of blurted it out. I had a dream about you 2 weeks ago. And so that was sort of an interesting, similar experience. But the next day I went and took a chest X-ray.
Okay.
And it was normal.
Okay.
I just wanted to confirm that was what was going on.
So maybe your generous nature, when you get these intuitive dreams, these precognitive dreams, out of a compassionate, application, you maybe overlay the information within yourself. So maybe it feels more personal. Maybe you get a sensory experience of what that cancer feels like, or really just feeling it with a much deeper context before you're meant to pass that information or supportively work with others that are actually really the experiencer. Did you find that this was an ongoing theme with some of these intuitive dreams, is that you would constantly be experiencing it directly within your body before you were able to interpret it for someone else?
I haven't had that many other experiences of dreaming other people's illness occasionally, but what I did have was a whole string of dreams about tornadoes,
Mm.
and specifically tornadoes in North Carolina, which are quite rare.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have a dream about a tornado, and the next day there'd be a tornado in North Carolina. And what even happened once when I was in Florida on a trip. I was in Florida, I had a dream about tornadoes hitting the RDU airport. And sure enough, the next day my flight was delayed because the tornado had torn the top off one of the
Yeah.
you know, part of the airport. And once I was up in Delaware and at the beach, and I dreamed about tornadoes. And the next day there were water spouts out on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a string of those. I'd never seen a water spout before or since. So that was those kind of things. Just made me wonder about how precognition is possible,
Right.
and then that sort of set me up for meeting Polly Delvitt, who came to work with me here at Duke Integrative Medicine as my assistant when I was the education director. And she walked in and started telling the story to a group of medical students, of undergrad students one day. And of course I was teaching about how she had dreamed about having a spider coming out of her mouth. Mm-hmm. And had the intuition that she had cancer of her tongue. And she went in and had a biopsy, and it was negative.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was so convinced that she kept persistently asking her dreams what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the next night she had Hot Lips Houlihan and Charles Winchester Thurston come from MASH and give her a dream second opinion, which was, they missed it, go back and biopsy it again. And they did and found the cancer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So very symbolic, right?
Oh,
she saw
yeah.
a spider.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see natural disasters that are symbolic for things that are happening in our personal lives, our relationships, our marriages, maybe our careers. And with the health component, it's really no different. There's some symbolism. It isn't necessarily immediately that she sees something necrotic on her tongue. It happened to come out through the symbolism of the spider, right?
And years later, after she did a lot of healing work around this, and years later, when she did have a recurrence, it was the spider escaping from its cage.
Okay.
So, and she lived about 20 years after her original diagnosis, which far exceeds what most people with head and neck cancer would expect the survival.
Mm-hmm.
But she had stacks of dream diaries in her apartment. It was crazy. I'd never seen. She'd write dreams down for an hour every morning. It was pretty intense commitment to it.
I think that the dream journal has become much more common with those that recognize that latent intuition is actually not even to be questioned anymore, but rather to be cultivated. And there's so many, little nuances that we experience throughout the day, things that we would probably get a lot more information in a foreshadowing way, or maybe just intuitively being aware of others that are going on in our lives if we'd stop and pause a little bit. But again, society, we're not really trained to think this way. In fact, we're just the opposite. We've been, trained to think that that this type of intuitive hit is less likely, or that we're unworthy, or that it's only for the special or the few, or that it's not terribly scientific. You did a wonderful TED Talk. I'd like to talk a little bit about the scientific process that went into being able to corroborate some of these findings. Can you provide that for our audience, regardless of what the TED Talk censorship people had to say? I really want to talk about the science that was applied in
yes,
that.
But we'll mention that it's a censored TED Talk. So I've joined the ranks of Graham Hancock and Rupert Sheldrake.
You're in good company.
Yes, right. It was a fascinating experience. Now the dream diagnosis with story from Polly set me up for about 2004. One of my best friends called me and said that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer, but that she'd had a dream about it a month before. Mm-hmm. And this was a very vivid precognitive dream. She actually saw herself on the operating room table having a lumpectomy by a woman, specifically a woman surgeon. It was such a vivid dream that she went right in and asked for a mammogram, and the mammogram came back normal.
Okay.
And the radiologist came out. Typically, the radiologist come out and say, "You can come back in a year. Everything's fine." And she was like, "I don't think so." And she goes, "I think I have cancer." And she hadn't mentioned the dream. She just said, "I'm really sure I have cancer." But the radiologist said, "Well, there's nothing there. We don't feel anything. There's nothing on the mammogram." She had fairly dense breasts, so she said, "I'd like an ultrasound." And the radiologist basically said, we don't do ultrasounds unless we have something we're specifically looking for, a
Mm-hmm.
cyst or a mass. And she said, well, I'm not leaving until you do the ultrasound.
Wow. She was insistent.
She was very insistent, and so sure that the dream was correct. And Raleigh, she goes, well, I wouldn't even know where to start. She says, how about right here? And she points to where the dream told her the cancer was.
Mm-hmm.
Raleigh just puts the ultrasound probe on there, turns white as a ghost, and sees the cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Says, how did you know it was there? And I was shown it in a dream, and that was the first time for that doctor's, breaking out of her comfort zone.
That's
for sure.
right. Waking up to the whole wonderful world that's beyond the materialistic science model, yes?
Way beyond. And then a week later, my friend had the appointment with the surgeon to arrange the surgery, and sure enough, it was the woman from the dream. So that was the icing on the cake.
Wow.
And
Very
that
conclusive.
story started me down this path. And then another physician friend of mine had a similar story. And then a third friend had a story about having a dream, and then went to the doctor, and the doctor just dismissed it, and she wound up dying of metastatic breast cancer a couple years later
Mm-hmm.
because the doctor didn't take her dream seriously. So that prompted me to want to do this survey of women around the world who'd had similar dreams, and I wound up, promoting on social media around the world. And 18 women I could count who had exactly those kinds of dreams.
Okay. They were all involved in your study? They were all volunteers for the study?
They were all volunteers for the study. And since then, I've kept in touch with most of them. We have a private Facebook group that they have conversations about, and they all, half of them have contributed their stories in detail to the new Dreams That Can Save Your Life book.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun to really get to know them better and to hear their stories, and also to realize that they'd used the dreams beyond just the diagnosis. A lot of them used it for healing. I think that's an important take-home message, that whether or not you find out about your cancer through a dream or not, you can still cultivate the use of the dreams for healing. And
sure.
And I always recommend everybody. I guess I have two goals here. One is to restore dreams to their rightful place in medicine and healing, and to encourage people to keep a dream diary and share it around the breakfast table with family members. And that's a cultural tradition of many indigenous peoples out there, and why we're not doing it is beyond me. So.
Well, it isn't encouraged. I mean, when you consider about how diversified we are in our belief systems, both from a philosophical and certainly from a religious perspective, sometimes, it really comes down to appreciating, number one, that yes, we are intuitive, and yes, that we even have the ability to work with what is mainstream and what is understood about healing, and that is the body is, engendered to heal itself. And we've all heard about the placebo effect. We've all heard about spontaneous remission. What is that if not the body rapidly healing itself? It getting on board with a conclusive understanding that its divine blueprint is to heal, and that it can heal much more rapidly, perhaps if we have less of our own consciousness in the way. Some of the issues that cause these types of diseases, we've done a lot more study, as you know, on the mental, emotional, and even the spiritual component, corroborating that. And that's a huge part of my work, and certainly your work with medical intuition. Are you able to introduce those that are open to the scientific level of the study with regards to interpreting the dreams and being able to get precognitive information with taking it to the next level and working with the medical intuitive component for healing as well?
Yeah, I should mention the experience in Raleigh at the TEDx talk was interesting in that I was coached specifically to be as conservative as possible.
Okay.
And
you can take the gloves off tonight.
I know. And they said, don't be Dr. Sedona. That was my coach's voice in my head. And so usually, people dress down for TED Talks, but I put, my suit coat on and wanted to look like a real doctor. And,
sure.
And the intriguing, and also said to act as if everyone in the audience is a skeptic. And I'm used to preaching to the choir and mind, body, spirit audiences. So it was a different audience.
Sure.
But the intriguing thing, the feedback I got in the afternoon, my talk was in the morning before lunch, and they said they were having discussion sessions at lunch between the morning and afternoon programs. And they said all anyone wanted to talk about at lunch were their dreams. So all people need are permission to start to value their dreams, and it happens.
Right.
People are fascinated, when everybody's got a dream story that they want to tell someone.
That's right.
And the sponsor for my research was dreamscloud.com, and they're the Facebook for dreams. And they're not that popular in this country, but becoming very popular overseas in Spain and Portugal and Turkey, and where all the millennials keep their dream diaries on their smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jean Marc Emden, who's the CEO of Dreams Cloud, asked some of the millennials, so why would you want to share your dreams with your friends? And they kind of look at him like, why wouldn't you? So
A whole nother avenue of who I am and how I experience life in another state of consciousness, right?
and yeah,
Equally relevant.
yeah, and they just set up a dream research lab down in Austin, Texas,
Okay.
and hopefully going to see some good research start to come out of that. And so the survey that I did was really just a pilot study. Doesn't really prove anything other than the fact that some people are having these dreams.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how many women are having dreams about breast cancer who don't have breast cancer. That's an important scientific question. And there are ways to answer that. And I'm busy working on creating a future study at Duke on women who are having breast biopsies.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a routine, most breast biopsies have about a third of them show cancer and about 2/3 of them show benign problems.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just get everyone to tell us their dreams before the biopsy, and then figure out if, when we look at their dreams, we can predict the results of the biopsy, that will be an interesting study. So we're going to need some funding to do that study.
Mm-hmm.
But it could really be very interesting if we get results.
So, what are the overall goals then in terms of the direct benefits of doing, paying attention to the dreams, keeping the journals, and doing some of the interpretation? Is the goal to be more proactive also in the dream state, like entering a lucid state where you can start to mold and morph the dream? Tell us a little bit more about what the ultimate goal is as we delve deeper into this.
Yeah, I've only had a few lucid dreams myself, but that's a pretty hot topic among millennials since the Inception movie, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't require the ability to have a lucid dream to get really good information on your dreams. The only thing I suggest to people is that they keep a diary by their bedside and write a question every night that they would like an answer to.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a health concern I need to know about? Why is my left shoulder hurting me?
Mm-hmm.
What about this person I'm thinking about dating? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can ask any question you want, but the only rule is you only ask one question a night, because when you get a bunch of dreams, you're not going to want to have to figure out which question goes with which dream. It's just like one question, and then assume that all the dreams that come afterwards are related to that question. And you can get information about all kinds of things.
How do you go about assisting and empowering those that are part of your study, and also those that you're directing your attention to in the TED Talks and any of the other educational components for better interpreting their dreams, understanding exactly how to language symbols, because symbols are a big deal. Natural disasters can very often be, again, an cover or overlay for something else. How is that educational component working for you, Larry?
Yeah, I've got on my LarryBurkMD.com website, I've got some a link section at the lower right corner, and there's a coaching session, then there's a dream section, and there's my little blog with my guidelines how you do a multi-dimensional approach to dream interpretation. And that means interpret it every different way you possibly can, from the Freudian point of view, the Jungian point of view, the psychodynamic, social, personal context, and they all could be true. That's the exciting thing about it. There's no one right way to interpret a dream, and it's so multidimensional that every way you approach it may have some meaning. And I think that's where it really gets exciting. And then look for any precognitive things, so you pay attention a couple days later to see if anything happens.
Mm-hmm.
Share the dream with other people. We have a dream sharing group at the Rhine Center that meets the third Monday of the month, where we all get together and bring dreams that are of interest and practice the protocol for the International Association for the Study of Dreams. When you're working with a group of people, you always start making your comment by saying, if this were my dream, I would wonder about this particular symbol and what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing that, you free the dreamer to accept or reject your reflection. It's like you're not telling them what their dream means. You're just saying, if this were my dream, I would wonder about these things. And it prompts the dreamer to think about something they may not have considered before. So that's a lot of fun to do that work. And we also do that, I mentioned you earlier, at the Monroe Institute, where I teach the medical intuition and symbolic healing workshop with Winter Robinson, who's a medical intuitive, we do dream sharing every morning for an hour after breakfast.
Okay.
And it's just, and when you're in a milieu where you're already doing intuitive work and using the hemisync tapes
Yes.
to get into an altered state, and Winter's teaching her medical intuitive exercises, and you add the dreams on top of it, you're in this intuitive soup for the whole week. And that sometimes the exercises trigger the dreams that are spectacular. So,
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, you're working from such an open consciousness. Not only are you giving yourself safe space to be talking about it every day and have others that you can bounce it off of to be more reflective, but it sounds like you're also working with the medical intuitive principles and the hemisync binaural beats, which we know assist in getting into prefrontal cortex and maybe being a little bit more awakened, lucid in our awakened state to direct attention to inquiry. In the same way that you set a question aside before you go to bed at night, you can actually go actively into that meditative state, seeking to get some answers that are clarifying. Do you see this kind of as a compounding approach then at this point, Larry?
Yeah, and I also combine it with emotional freedom techniques, the tapping technique or EFT, and find that often when people are seeking a health breakthrough or some other kind of a breakthrough, that the answer may come through the dream. And then there's a technique called the dream to freedom technique where you actually look through your dream diary and find the most upsetting thing that you dreamed last night.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tapping target that you're going to work on, because that's where your subconscious is attempting to get your attention to the strongest degree. So then just go. And if I get stuck working with someone with EFT, I'll just say, do you have any dreams lately? And they'll say, oh, yeah, I had this dream. And sometimes it just captures the essence of what they need to work on so elegantly that better than anything I could have made up. That's for sure. So, yeah, it's great.
Well, let's circle back a little bit about the TED Talk. I know that when we are able to bring really powerfully relevant content into, an arena like that, it can open a lot of doors. And yes, it can also, trigger some folks the wrong way because you might be challenging, their prescription for reality and their idea around boundaries and materialistic science and maybe some other foundations that they're more financially vested in. Did you find that despite the censorship that eventually took place, that you had a lot of positive feedback from those that had been really open and expansive about the dream analysis?
Yeah, I mean, the TED Talk is one way to get the word out. And also, I've been blessed in that Christiane Northrup supports a lot of my work. So when I write a blog on dreams or on medical intuition, she'll post it on her Facebook page, which has 430,000 people on it. And I'll get thousands of responses. So that's, that's, I've been really grateful for that opportunity. And it's interesting now that the TEDx talk is really only available on my homepage. So unfortunately, it's not widely available on the general YouTube search. So if you want to watch the TED Talk, just go to LarryBurkMD.com and watch it, and it share it with your friends. That would be a good idea.
Yeah. This is where we'd really like you to promote your work, because this is a lift for everyone. Many of us have known that we were getting prophetic information in our dreams. Many of us have felt really powerfully compelled that when we woke up the next morning, there was some key action points that perhaps we needed to pursue. And the more supportive encouragement that we can get that looks at this not only from a metaphysical standpoint, but also very much from a scientific standpoint that embraces more of the mainstream construct around, intuitive hits and deja vu and just precognition. I think it's going to support everyone to be moving much more proactively, not only into their health, because this whole thing about precognitive dreams, you're talking about tornadoes. You're mentioning that there might be some things you need to be conscientious about as you're getting ready to travel that might not have anything to do with a natural disaster, but just that there's going to be something that's going to hold you up, that's going to, force you to have to reschedule or rethink some of your travel plans. So let's talk about the broader application of precognition in these dreams. Do you want to give some other examples that some of your clients and your study patients have provided you during this work?
Yeah, I think it's also important to realize that for left brain people, this is your best access to guidance, because it's the only time when your left brain filter gets shut off and then your intuition can come out and play, unless you're actively doing imagery exercises or something when you're awake. And so I think the opportunities are are quite rich, and and it's just such the dreams and hypnosis are the two most neglected things in all of medicine,
Mm-hmm.
because they're two of the most powerful ways to get in an altered state and to do healing work. And uh, I mean, hypnosis happens when you're awake, dreams happen when you're asleep, and otherwise they have a lot in common. And I've been doing hypnosis for 20 years with people who are claustrophobic in the MRI scanner. But I am I'm struck by one particular dream that taught me a lot about the whole left brain, right brain
Mm-hmm.
experience. So, um, 3 months before the TED Talk in December of 2015, I was going for a bike ride the next day with my wife, and it was one of those cold snaps during December. And we just bought thermal bike gear. We thought, oh, this is great. So we're going to go test out our thermal bike gear the next morning. But that night I had a dream where I was driving in a car through a construction zone, and the woman's passenger sitting next to me said, "Someone told me I'm going to have a near-death experience today."
Mm.
And since I'm a real student of NDEs, that got my attention in the dream. So I decided I'm going to drive really be careful the rest of
Mm-hmm.
the dream.
Mm-hmm.
But despite that, I wound up in a hospital bed, and my whole left side was damaged.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, can't be good. I'm laying there in the bed, and the neurologist, the dream neurologist, comes around on making rounds on me. He points to me and says, "Do you have any neurological symptoms? Can you move your arm?" I moved my arm, moved my leg, and he said, "You're fine. Go home." I woke up. I was disturbed enough by the dream uh, that when the bike ride
Mm-hmm.
came up, I was like trying to drive bike really carefully. But usually I share my dreams with my wife, but that morning I didn't because it creeped me out a little bit. So I said, I'm going to be really careful. We put all our gear on, and we realized we have summer biking gloves, with the fingertips cut out.
Sure.
And we didn't buy winter biking gloves. So okay, well, off we go. And so we drive up and ride up and down our cul-de-sac road 3 times. And after 2 times, my fingers are getting really cold.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm sure your grip wasn't as keen as you would have liked it
and
to
I
have
had
been.
this really, but I was being very careful about, and about riding, and until the third lap, I said, well, I'm not going to make it through another lap unless I warm up my hands. So I stick my right hand in my jacket pocket to warm it up. And so then I'm going down the last big hill, and I realize I'm going too fast, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be disastrous. So I start to grab the left brake, and for bikers, you know that you never squeeze just the front brake. But I
Mm-hmm.
could see my hand doing it in slow motion. I'm like, no, don't do that.
Oh no.
And the next thing I knew, I was right over the handlebar
Yes.
on the asphalt, and I landed on my left shoulder, my left elbow, my
Yes.
left hip,
Yes.
and I bounced right off the asphalt. And I rolled, and I was in an area of the pavement that was under construction. It was a patchwork thing, just like in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And after I bounced to my feet, I thought, oh, well, I don't think I broke anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and the dream neurologist said I was going to be okay. So I picked the bike up, which is just a little bit damaged, and I rode home. And when I got home, I realized I was pretty badly bruised.
Yeah.
And I took a bunch of arnica and other homeopathic remedies, and I wound up fine a week later. But then I puzzled over, why did I have that dream?
Mm-hmm.
What was that about?
Mm-hmm.
Because it certainly wasn't a very successful precognitive dream, because it didn't prevent the accident. So that was the first thing. It was a
You're going to blame the dream, huh,
then
Larry?
it was like, was that a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Yeah.
But the deeper I dug into the symbolism, I realized, okay, so I put my right hand in my pocket, which is connected to my left brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I took my left brain offline.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing that was linearly keeping me safe.
Right.
And then my left hand, which is connected to my right brain, which is usually my intuitive side, which generally on a higher level keeps me safe
Mm-hmm.
intuitively,
Mm-hmm.
created the accident.
Yeah.
So I'm going, how the hell would I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, okay, I just bounced off the concrete and got back up, and I didn't wind up in the ICU with a broken hip.
Mm-hmm.
and it turned out I was starting back at, I left Duke from 2004 to 2015. I was just starting back in my orientation at Duke that week.
Hmm.
I would have missed the orientation. I would have been in the hospital for a month with a broken hip, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that the message was I created a lesson in resilience for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I just turned 60 the week before. I could turn 60, bounce off the ground, and not break it.
Right.
And it turned out to be a very important lesson because 3 months later, it came to be March. I had booked my schedule completely full of travel on the weekends, lecturing, conferences, radiology, everything. And then my TED Talk got accepted.
Mm.
So on top of everything I'd already booked up, my busiest week, I had to prepare and give the TED Talk. And my mother and my sister were both diagnosed with recurrent breast cancer in the same month.
Wow.
All that
That was an awful lot
was
all at
leading up
once.
to that TED Talk.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't felt resilient, I would have never made it through that month. So,
I would question that there was just so much compounded information and evidence that was trying to remind you how much we're co-creating our realities. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share, I had a precognitive dream, and I've had these my whole entire life. I continue to have them now. But I think that rather than there being an external consult, which we often refer to when we're talking about guidance or even our higher selves, angels, whatever our form of deity is, that very often, just as Albert Einstein has said, that, there is no real time. Time is in the ever present now. It's kind of a linear construct that we have all agreed to in one form or another. In the dream state, we might be asking ourselves as a future version of ourselves whether or not we want to make those choices by being able to be given a soft replay, or foreshadowing of what it was going to be. And at one point in my life, when I was going through a lot of my training, I chose to fly over to the south of France to be involved in some Reiki energy training and sound medicine and flower essences, etc. And just as I was getting ready for that trip, I think I was about 2 weeks shy. I had a dream that was very vivid, very clear, that I was going to be driving in the south of France where I was intending to go with a colleague. For some reason, I was driving, and it seemed in the dream it was obligatory that I be the only one that was driving. And it was one of those little micro French cars, I don't even know what it was. It wasn't a Peugeot, but it was just what you think of Europe and you think of travel, little micro blue car. And that we were driving along the coast, the Mediterranean. And there was a car accident, and then the dream progressed, and I was a cripple. I didn't have use of my legs anymore, and my spouse and my children were around me, and I realized that my life had forever changed. And when I woke up the next day, I was crystal clear that I was being asked if I wanted to take my life in that direction, if I was willing to experience the lessons that would be inherent with that life choice. By the time I got over to France, I'd kind of forgotten a little bit about the dream and the excitement and everything else, and I'd gone through a lot of training. But as soon as we came out of the training and we were ready to go see the Côte d'Azur and the Mediterranean, would you believe it was a tiny little blue car, and my colleague was unable to drive out of the country. For some reason, her license was prohibited. So I was going to be the one driving, and the accident happened at night in the dream, and we were going to go up to Monaco that evening. And I told her, this is the night that I need to make this decision. I'm not going. I don't choose to live the rest of my life, paralyzed. I think it's really exciting, the work that you're doing. And I think that if we really blow it open and explore all that's available to us with examining our dreams and using these techniques, the EFT, the medical intuitive pieces, let's talk to our audience about how they can really encompass the full opportunity that you're providing here.
Listening to your story, it reminds me that often when we have dreams about cars and travel, it's about the cars symbolize our own body,
Sure,
our own consciousness, and just like a house does in many circumstances. But I was also thinking about the fact that I had a female passenger. I was in the driver's seat, so they always ask who was driving the car. And if you're not driving the car, then you're out of control.
right.
But the woman passenger talks about having someone said they're going to have a near-death experience today, and I've been really interested in NDEs for years, and it's particularly the personal transformation that occurs after an NDE. People have no fear of death. They have a sense of purpose. They were sent back for a reason. They have psychic abilities. They have electromagnetic healing abilities, and and when I realized that that was really a signal that something important was going to happen,
Right.
transformation was going to happen, and that kind of transformation is what we're all looking for these days in the total chaos that the world is in. We're looking
Yeah.
for major breakthroughs and major transformations, and dreams are one way to get there. And I think one of the exciting things that's happened since the TED Talk and the original paper that I published is I've been getting reports of other people having dreams about other types of cancer. And
Mm-hmm.
that's become very interesting. One of my high school classmates, who I didn't know that well, uh, sent me a message. Oh, I had a dream about uh, having blood in the toilet every night that really freaked me out, and I wound up finally going to get a colonoscopy,
Mm-hmm.
and sure enough, she had a pea-sized cancer that had already spread to the lymph node,
Oh,
and so she had surgery and chemo, and that was 13 years ago. She's fine.
okay.
So, but if she'd have let that cancer grow to the point where it actually was causing blood,
Mm-hmm.
still it might have been too late,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was a wonderful story. And then the other thing you'd ask about in terms of interpreting dreams, um, sometimes you need to ask for a clarifying dream. So if you get a puzzling dream message, particularly about a health concern, it's important to ask whether um, this is a real dream about a physical illness or
Mm-hmm.
whether it's um, a metaphor for
Okay.
something going on in your life.
So
And
intentionally going into the dream state the
go
night
back in,
before with the dream journal handy, but with that very specific
ask
request.
for a
Okay.
clarifying. I need to know: is this a real dream or is this a metaphor?
Mm-hmm.
And this was first brought to my attention. There's a story about that on my TED Talk, which people can watch. But this was first brought to my attention when on my initial presentation at the International Association for Study of Dreams. One of the researchers came up and said, "I had a patient who had a very vivid dream about having cancer in her groin,
Mm-hmm.
and she went and had every test imaginable, X-rays, ultrasound, all came back negative. And finally, she had this aha moment. I don't know if it was in a dream or just an awaking eureka insight. Was like, I think my boyfriend, who's an astrologic cancer sign, is malignant, and I need to end this relationship.
Wow.
And
That's some interpreting, isn't it?
that's very interesting. So then you might ask, though, when does something go from being a metaphor to being a physical problem? In other words, if
Exactly.
she had ignored that warning, got married to the guy,
Mm-hmm.
would she have gotten the cancer there eventually?
Well, as above, so below,
Yeah,
and as within, so without, and that's what we're really talking about with in medical intuition, and this is probably in alignment with your protocol and your application of it as well. Nothing shows up physically until it has shown up in our lighter layers of density. So we're spirit beings, we're mental and emotional beings. Things have a tendency to trickle down and then they manifest in the body as the last messenger. We're only 4.7% matter, in 100% of what is anyway. So what are your thoughts on that?
I also realized speaking of transformation and magical shifts happening in people's lives. The very popular actor these days, Mark Ruffalo, who's like
Yeah.
one of the biggest activists. Went to uh, work stand with the water protectors up in North Dakota. He's
Yeah,
always
that's right.
anti-fracking. In 2000, when his career was just taking off, he came on the movie set one day with find the doctor and said, "I had a dream that I have a brain tumor,"
Hmm.
and and the doctor just kind of rolls his eyes and he said, "No, to humor you, we'll get a CAT scan," because he had no problem, no hearing, no neurological problems, no hearing problems, nothing. So he goes and get a CAT scan, and he has a golf ball-sized acoustic neuroma in his eighth nerve in his ear.
Okay.
So
Wow.
a benign brain tumor, but big enough that it was causing a major problem, and um, so he had to have surgery and face losing his hearing. He would definitely lose the hearing in the ear. But when they did the audiology test, he'd only had an 8% hearing loss, which was imperceptible. So there's no way he could have thought, "Oh, I'm not hearing as well out of that ear." He was asymptomatic, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he wound up going and having the surgery. And the risk of the surgery, the biggest risk, is that they'll damage the facial nerve, which is the nerve next to the acoustic nerve, and your whole face will be paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
So for an actor, it would have been the end of his career.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes through the surgery. He wakes up in the recovery room, and he can move his face,
Mm-hmm.
but he can't hear anymore out of that ear. And at the end of the day, as he's getting ready to go home, his whole face droops and goes dead. His whole half the face goes to sleep.
Now, was that a Bell's palsy stress response, or was that very literally the?
For 9 months, the side of his face was paralyzed.
Okay.
He went for acupuncture every day or every week, and after 9 months, he could move. His eyes started to move, and his whole face came back. Talk about a miracle! And so the guy was like a really amazing initiation at the 6th chakra level.
Yes.
In the open him up to whatever his real mission was.
Well, they say neuroplasticity is a legitimately and easily understandable thing when it comes down to the point that we have this gray matter, and it can rewire itself as is necessary for the lifestyle and the needs that the vehicle is requiring that happens to be housing it. So it's a pretty exciting thing to think that there's more than one way to view any prognosis, isn't there?
And I was also going to mention something about using dreams for healing, because I think that's an important piece of what we put in
Yeah,
the
let's
book.
talk about that.
There is an amazing dreamer in the study named Wanda Birch, who wrote a book, She Who Dreams, which is my all-time favorite dream book. And
can you say that again? It's
She Who Dreams.
She Who Dreams. Okay.
WandaBirch.com. And she has had just incredible dreams from the time she was a teenager up through her diagnosis and beyond. But the most important dream that she ever shared, and we put in the book, is that during her chemotherapy, she would dream about the toxic bags of poison hanging up at her bedside, coming down through the IV tubes into her arm. And in the dream, all the XX on the bags, and as it comes down the tubes into her arm, it turns into energy food coming down the tube and goes into her arm. So she saw that dream, recorded it as a guided meditation, and listened to it during her chemo set. And at the end of her chemo, after she was all done, the doctor goes, "Oh, there's got to be some mistake here. You got twice as much chemo as anyone else, and you didn't have any side effects."
Was this a transmutation then in your mind?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, really. I mean,
she chose to perceive that in the same way that others are healed by placebo. She chose to see it as becoming nutritive or a nutraceutical in her body rather than...
What better way to come up with a
Sure.
guided visualization than from your own subconscious message that this is going to work? Wow. So,
now, is this part of the work then that you're doing also, and does this come up in your book? Is this something that our viewers will be able to read?
We've got a whole section on healing dreams, and there are many more good ones. Oh, since I know you had a speaker on about extraterrestrial, consciousness.
Yes,
so
we have.
One of my favorite dreams in the whole book is called the Silver Spaceship Alien Dream.
Okay, do tell.
And this woman, 29 years old, Dana Anderson, this is many years ago, she had stage 4 uterine cancer at age 29 and had a 2-year-old child and was basically dying of uterine cancer. And they said, even if we give you all the chemo in the world, you have a 5% chance of survival. And one night she had to dream about a silver spaceship came. The aliens got out, came up, told her, "You need interferon." And then they gave her some interferon. And she was like, "Whoa, okay." So she goes into the doctor and she tells her oncologist, bless his heart, that she needs to get interferon. And she'd never heard of it. And it was an experimental drug back in the 80s, very rarely used. And the doctor said, "Oh, he's really impressed that you got specific recommendations for an experimental drug that she never heard of."
Right.
So he prescribed it to her. She got better.
Sure enough. I think that we can go there. We've had many guests that have come on, and we've talked about altered states through tapping into neural receptors in the brain that we don't commonly have stimulated for DMT, psilocybin, San Pedro, Iboga. Having just come back from Rhythmia in Costa Rica, where a big part of the cleanse and a big part of the coaching the awakening is to work with plant medicine. It was very common, because we had feedback forums after every single one of these plant journey sessions to ask what kinds of experiences people had. And it was extremely common to have the report that healing had taken place in form of a psychic surgery. And in that state, and Larry, I know you're familiar with this and you've done some study there, The lucidity and the connection to the all and the ability to interpret other sentient life that is connected and deeply and compassionately linked to our well-being and seeking to be able to assist us from a more conscious state is highly available. And for many, they talked about extraterrestrial beings that, you know, came in one form or another, a lot of common ones repeated again and again. And these are from people that didn't know each other, people that came from different walks of life, many who this didn't fall into their belief systems. But what is your take on that? Are you seeing this as an opportunity to just really blow the lid off our consciousness in these states?
I think guides come in all shapes and sizes.
Okay.
And if you get if your guide's an alien stepping out of an extraterrestrial vehicle, go with it. You know.
Sure.
Now my co-author, Kat O'Keefe Canavas, her guides are very unique in that she'll be having a regular dream, and all of a sudden it'll freeze. Like, you know, you hate when your computer screen freezes and you're, oh no, the blue screen of death is happening. You know, and then a pop-up window appears, and through the pop-up window steps Franciscan monk with robe,
drawstring tie,
leather sandals, the whole, and a hood, and they can never see his face. But then they tell her exactly what to do. Go back and get another mammogram. They missed it. Do this for healing, whatever. And so she has the access to these amazing monk guides. That's
fabulous.
And that's a real gift. And she has a lot of lucid dreams as well. And I think this is a great time to wake up.
Yeah.
Since that's your tagline here.
Sure is.
And I think the Inception movie was a big step in that direction. And I think it woke up a lot of millennials to be curious about these things. And I think that's, particularly hopeful venue for people to explore and combining it with, I should point out that the real goal of lucid dreaming is not to have really cool dreams. It's just like the real goal of mindfulness meditation is not to have a great meditation twice a day. It's to become mindful in your life.
Yes.
And then the real goal of lucid dreaming is to treat your waking life like a lucid dream. And so whatever you practice during your lucid dreaming experiences, you do the same thing in your life when you're awake.
Yes.
You treat everything that you experience as a dream symbol, including your symptoms. I think from a medical point of view, if people start, this is another one of my major messages for the coaching work that I do, is that your symptoms are all messages from your subconscious, and they need to be addressed the same way you would interpret a dream symbol. And there's a message coming. Unfortunately, in our medical culture, the message that we all get is shoot the messenger.
Yes.
In medical school on up, we don't want to hear those symptoms. We just want them to go away, and we'll do anything to suppress them.
Right.
And
which is why we have the epidemics that we currently have.
Opioid epidemic. And the fact that we're spending millions of dollars, driving up the cost of healthcare, when the messages are there just for the asking, and your body's going to keep telling you, if you listen, you'll get the message. And on some level, it's that your life is out of balance and needs to do a course correction.
And some reflection is absolutely essential. It's required, isn't it? We really do need to look at our lives, look at ourselves, look at our choices. If we're not seeing them in our conscious waking state, then our dreams are going to be trying to find ways to filter when our conscious mind is trying to derail and keep a very, very tight box around what we think and what we feel. It has a tendency to bleed through. Let's talk about how we can get some of our viewers to your websites and some of your programs and other things you're looking to support right now.
So Larry Burk, MD is the website. And then there's also a link there for the Monroe Medical Intuition and Symbolic Healing workshop, which is coming up May 19th through 25th. In the beautiful hills of Virginia, and food and board are included in the registration fee. And it's a wonderful opportunity to really immerse yourself in a healing, intuitive environment. And then I do coaching at orientalhealthsolutions.com, which is my wife's business in Durham. And I'm also doing online coaching now as well. So that's fun for me. When I'm not reading MRI scans, I just as soon be doing EFT and dream interpretations.
Wonderful.
And I think that, and also just for the local viewers, I'm doing a 4-session EFT workshop at Duke Integrative Medicine. And it's been one dream of mine to teach EFT there for 15 years, and it's finally happening starting March 22nd every Thursday night for a month. So that should be a real fun opportunity for people to go deeper into the EFT world.
That sounds like a tremendously comprehensive support. And my understanding is you're taking pre-orders on your book.
Yes.
Dreams Can Save Your Life, and this is through Amazon, correct?
Yeah. And I'll be doing for local people, I'm doing a book signing at the Regulator bookstore on the 19th in Durham. And then I'll be going on a little book tour around through Charlotte, Knoxville, Lexington, Columbus, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia.
Oh, you're going to be busy.
The last week of April, so that'll be fun.
Well, we are thrilled that you were able to join us this evening and be able to share this really pertinent and I think deeply needed by our current society, by humanity at this time, that everyone's seeking answers. We recognize that there's a lot of disconnect out there, Larry, and you've brought such a really firm and clear and scientific approach to this, as well as being open to some of the more esoteric, which I think we need to view in all of its wholeness to be able to see the inclusive threads that connect everything. It's been a pleasure having you tonight, and I want to remind all of our viewers to please take a look at our YouTube channel where you can review and view this information again, be able to hear some of the things you might have missed, and be able to connect with Dr. Larry Burk and some of the profound work that he's doing with many of his colleagues. You know, we have been told by Indigenous people, and it bears repeating, we are meant to wake up from the dream, and they didn't just mean the sleeping time that we consider to be dream time. Everything is dream time. We need to be waking up and becoming lucid to our lives and reflective of our choices and the consequences that we are very often co-creating for ourselves so that we can make much more empowered and much more intelligent and joyful choices in all of our lives. Again, Solutionary TV, we're about the solutions. We recommend that you take a look at our website, go to solutionarytv.com, consider being a patron or a sponsor so that we can continue to promote this work and have amazing guests like Dr. Larry Burk. And also take a look at some of the books that I've written, The Reluctant Intuitive, A Soulful Confection and Practical Guide, and the referral material from the many other guests that have been joining us recently. As we support one another's work and one another's vision, we actually empower ourselves to be able to follow those paths that are going to equally create that vision for ourselves. And we welcome you and give gratitude that you are here today. Remember that together, we are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.